A little boy asks Melania Trump about God. Her response brings him to tears. In a world where politics and public figures often seem so distant from the everyday lives of ordinary people, there are moments that bridge the gap in ways we never expect. Imagine a small boy, no older than 7, his eyes wide with curiosity, sitting in the presence of one of the most talked about women in America, Melania Trump. It's a quiet moment, the hustle and bustle of the world around them fading into the background as the boy's innocent question echoes through the room, breaking the silence. "Mrs. Trump, what do you think about God?" That one simple question, so pure in its delivery, is not just a question. It's a doorway. A doorway into a conversation that would touch something deep, something real, and something profound. It would reveal the vulnerability of two people from completely different worlds, one a child, the other a former First Lady, and open up a moment of connection that neither of them could have anticipated. As the words left the boy's mouth, it became clear this wasn't just about religion. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't even about the woman standing before him, with her composed presence and poised smile. This was about something much larger, something that transcends our daily struggles, the noise of public life, and the hustle of our modern world. It was about faith, hope, and the unspoken emotions that we all carry deep inside, regardless of who we are or where we come from. Melania Trump, known to many as a reserved figure with a carefully curated image, was taken aback by the question. The response she gave was not rehearsed, nor was it the polished political answer you might expect from someone in her position. Instead, it was something raw, something unexpected, an answer that left a lasting impact on the young boy and everyone who would later hear about it. As Melania spoke, her voice held something that wasn't usually seen in the public eye, a softness, a vulnerability that resonated deeply with the boy and with those who would come to witness this incredible interaction. What she said next wasn't just a conversation about faith, but a reminder that even those who seem to have everything, who stand at the center of attention, experience moments of doubt, reflection, and wonder about the bigger picture of life. The boy, who initially seemed so innocent in his question, was not prepared for the wave of emotion that followed. Tears filled his eyes, and his small hands trembled as he listened to Melania's words. It was clear that this exchange would change something in him, something profound that he might not even fully understand yet. But we could see it in the way his gaze softened, in the way he nodded, in the way his soul seemed to absorb the quiet power of the response. But what was it that Melania said? What was the magic in her words that touched this little boy so deeply? Why did it bring him to tears? And what did it reveal about her that no one had ever seen before? As we explore this unexpected moment, we'll take you deeper into the heart of this touching encounter, where the complexities of faith, vulnerability, and humanity come together in a way no one could have predicted. This is not just a story about a famous person or a child asking a question. It's a story about the shared experiences that bind us all, no matter where we come from or how different we may seem. Stay with us, because what happened next might just leave you in awe, questioning your own beliefs, your own moments of doubt, and your connection to something greater than yourself. But for now, we leave you with the boy's tear-filled eyes, his hands still trembling. What did he hear from Melania Trump that brought him to such an emotional place? The answer to that question is just the beginning. The room was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. Outside, the world continued to spin, politicians making speeches, debates echoing across social media, and the chaos of daily life pressing in on everyone. Yet in this little moment with the boy's eyes locked on Melania Trump, it felt like the whole universe had paused. His question hung in the air, as if waiting for something profound to happen. And it did. But first, let's take a step back. Melania Trump, for many, is a figure caught between two worlds. On the one hand, she's the former First Lady, admired by some for her poise, her elegance, and the mystery that surrounds her. She carries with her the weight of public opinion, of being constantly scrutinized under a microscope. On the other hand, she's a woman with her own story, her own experiences, her own moments of doubt and faith that no one sees. Many people don't realize how much of a distance there is between what the public perceives and what's real. Behind the tailored outfits, the composed public appearances, and the carefully crafted persona is a woman who, like any of us, has questions. Questions about life, about faith, about purpose. And yet, despite all the noise that surrounds her, Melania remains mostly silent, content to observe from the background, away from the public's relentless gaze. Until now. The boy's question, so innocent, so direct, cut through the armor she had built around herself. It wasn't just a question about religion. It was a question about her own beliefs, about the very things that many people, regardless of their public status, often wrestle with in private, the bigger questions. What do we believe in? What do we hope for when everything else is stripped away? For the boy, it seemed like a simple question, but the weight of it was enormous. He had no idea the ripple effect it would create. His wide-eyed innocence made him seem like a messenger, unburdened by the complexities of the world. But for Melania, the question felt like an invitation to share something deeper, something more personal. Her response, though brief, was laden with a vulnerability she hadn't shared publicly before. She paused for a moment. In that silence, the boy, waiting anxiously for an answer, seemed to reflect the very thing Melania was thinking about. What could she say that would make sense to this child, and more importantly, to herself? She thought about her upbringing, her childhood in Slovenia, the values instilled in her by her family, and the faith that had been a quiet, constant presence in her life. But faith wasn't always easy, especially for someone who had lived in the spotlight, whose every move had been analyzed by millions. Melania had often questioned herself, even her role in the world. She had been criticized, praised, misunderstood. She had experienced the highs of public life and the lows of constant scrutiny. The world wanted answers, answers to who she was, what she stood for, and how she truly felt about the big questions of life. And then there was the boy's tear-filled eyes. That vulnerability in his expression touched something deep inside her. She could see the sincerity in him, the rawness that only children seem to possess. In that moment, she wasn't the former First Lady, the public figure. She was just a woman looking into the face of a child who wanted to know more about the world, about faith, and about God. Melania spoke, her words gentle, almost tentative at first, but gradually gaining strength as she continued. She told the boy that faith was a journey, that it wasn't always easy, but that it was something deeply personal, something that could guide us through the most difficult times. She spoke of love, kindness, and the belief that we are all connected by something greater than ourselves. It wasn't a sermon. It was a conversation, an exchange between two people who, despite their differences, were searching for answers to the same questions. The boy, listening intently, began to tremble, his small hands clasped together, as if he were holding onto the very words she was saying. He wasn't just hearing her answer, he was feeling it. The vulnerability in Melania's voice, her honesty, her willingness to share something so deep, something so personal, affected him in a way that no one could have predicted. And that's when the tears came. For the boy, the answer wasn't just an answer, it was a moment of understanding. A moment where the weight of the world, the confusion, the doubt, and the questions all seemed to melt away, if only for a fleeting second. It was as if the truth Melania shared unlocked something within him, something so powerful that it left him unable to speak, unable to contain the emotions that flooded his heart. And in that moment, as the boy stood there, tears streaming down his face, Melania couldn't help but feel something shift inside her too. It wasn't just the boy who had been changed by this exchange. She, too, had been reminded of the very things she had once believed in, before the world took over, before the chaos and the noise drowned out the quiet whispers of faith and purpose. The tension in the room was thick. The boy's sobs were quiet, but they carried a weight that was hard to ignore. Melania stood there, unsure of what to do, but also feeling a deep sense of connection. In that moment, the boy's vulnerability had reminded her of something so important: the power of sharing, of opening up, of being real. For a brief moment, they were both stripped of everything else, the roles they played in the world, the labels placed upon them, and were simply two people sharing a moment of truth. But what would happen next? Would this moment of connection, this deep and profound exchange, change the boy forever? And what about Melania? Had this conversation given her something she had been searching for all along? The tension lingered, and we were left wondering, could one simple question, one unexpected conversation, really have the power to change everything? And how would this moment of raw emotion ripple out into the world, leaving both Melania and the boy forever transformed? As the boy stood there, his tears still flowing, a quiet tension filled the room. Melania watched him, unsure of how to proceed. In a way, she had shared something vulnerable, something raw that she had not revealed to many, not even to the world. She had opened up, and now she could see the impact of her words, how deeply they had affected this young boy. But she knew that this wasn't just about him. This was about both of them. They had crossed a bridge that neither of them had anticipated, and in that moment, something had shifted. The boy slowly wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, his breath hitching between sobs. Melania knelt down to his level, her heart heavy with empathy. "Hey," she said softly, her voice breaking the stillness. "It's okay. You're not alone in this. Faith isn't always clear, but it's always with us. Even in the hardest times, it's there." Her words were simple, but the truth in them was undeniable. She wasn't just talking about religion or dogma. She was speaking to something more profound, an understanding that no matter how small or alone one might feel, there's always something greater than ourselves at work, something unseen but deeply felt. The boy, still trembling, looked up at her with wide eyes, as if the weight of her words was still sinking in. It was as though, in that moment, his heart had been cracked open, revealing something deep and unexplored. He nodded slowly, his tears subsiding, replaced by a quiet, steady understanding. But Melania wasn't done yet. She stood and held out her hand to him, a gesture of reassurance. "I know things might not always make sense," she said, her voice now steady and calm. "But we have to keep moving forward. And sometimes, all we need is a little bit of faith, faith that we're not alone in this." The boy took her hand, his small fingers wrapping around hers, grounding both of them in the shared moment. For Melania, it was a reminder that even in the midst of everything that had happened in her life, there were moments of connection that were more important than anything else. In the quiet of that moment, she realized that her role wasn't just about being a figure in the spotlight. It was about being real, being human, and sharing those moments of vulnerability with others. That was where true strength came from. As the boy's tears dried, he looked up at Melania, his face softening into a tentative smile. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice still shaky but filled with gratitude. It wasn't just a thank you for the answer, for the words she had given him. It was a thank you for being there, for seeing him, for listening. Melania smiled back, her heart swelling with warmth. "You're welcome," she replied. "Just remember, we all have those moments, and we all get through them." For a few more moments, neither of them spoke, simply standing together in the quiet. The world outside may have continued on, the noise of daily life pressing in on them, but in this small space, there was peace, a peace that had been found in vulnerability, in openness, and in the shared understanding of something bigger than themselves. As the boy left with his family, his hand still holding onto hers, Melania watched him go. She couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. This moment, this unexpected conversation, had given her something she hadn't realized she needed. It had reminded her of the power of faith, not as a doctrine, but as a feeling, as a truth that transcended everything else. It was a quiet force that lived inside all of us, waiting to be remembered when we needed it the most. Later, as Melania reflected on the encounter, she realized just how much it had impacted her. She had been so caught up in the public image she had to maintain, the roles she played in the political world, that she had forgotten the importance of these small, intimate moments. It wasn't about the world's opinion of her. It wasn't about her public persona. It was about moments like these, moments of connection, of shared vulnerability, and of recognizing that we're all just human, searching for meaning in a world that can often feel overwhelming. The boy's question, so simple and pure, had served as a catalyst for something much larger than either of them could have anticipated. And in the end, that's what made the moment so special. It wasn't the answer she gave him that mattered most. It was the bond they shared, the unspoken understanding that passed between them. In a world filled with noise and division, this was a moment of quiet truth, a reminder that we are all connected in ways we often forget. As the story of this powerful encounter began to spread, people from all over took notice. Some saw it as a sign of hope, a reminder that even in the most unexpected moments, there is a power in vulnerability and connection. Others reflected on their own journeys of faith, realizing that, like Melania and the boy, they too had moments where their beliefs were tested, and where faith, however small, had helped them through. And as for Melania, she carried that moment with her long after it ended. The boy's question, his tears, and her response had changed something inside her. It had reminded her that no matter where life took her, there would always be moments of truth and connection, and that those moments were what truly mattered. As the final chapters of this unexpected encounter played out, one thing was clear: moments of faith, understanding, and vulnerability don't just change the people involved. They can change the world one heart at a time.